The crowd is on their feet, the arena is absolutely deafening, and then it happens. Darby Allin's music hits, but something feels wrong. The lights flicker. The tension is suffocating. And before anyone can process what's about to unfold, pure chaos explodes across that arena like a bomb going off. Tables are flying, bodies are crashing, and the Death Riders are unleashing absolute hell on one of AEW's most beloved stars. This isn't just another segment. This is a massacre. This is a statement. And what happens next? The Death Riders don't just walk out through the entrance ramp like normal wrestlers. No. They escape through the crowd like criminals fleeing a crime scene, leaving Darby Allin broken, bloodied, and possibly questioning everything he thought he knew about survival in this business. If you're not angry right now, if your blood isn't boiling, then you didn't see what we all witnessed. Smash that like button if you're as furious as we are. Drop a comment telling us how you really feel about this attack. Share this video because everyone needs to see what just went down. And if you haven't subscribed yet, look, we're all in this together, trying to make sense of the madness that is professional wrestling, so hit that subscribe button and join the Ring Rumble family. We need you here. Now let's break down every single devastating second of this attack. Darby Allin has been on a collision course with destruction for weeks now. This man has defied death more times than we can count. He's thrown himself off ladders, crashed through glass, taken punishment that would end most careers, and somehow, he keeps getting back up. That's what makes him special. That's what makes him Darby Allin. But the Death Riders? They've been watching. They've been waiting. And they've been planning something that would send shockwaves through the entire wrestling world. When Darby's music hit on Dynamite, fans were expecting another one of his iconic moments. Maybe a promo. Maybe a challenge. Maybe even a surprise match. What they got instead was a nightmare. The Death Riders came out of nowhere. Jon Moxley, Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, and the rest of this vicious group descended on Darby like a pack of wolves tearing apart their prey. There was no warning. There was no bell. There was no referee to stop it. This was pure, unfiltered violence. Moxley, the leader of this group, the man who's turned into something dark and twisted, led the charge with that look in his eyes. You know the look. That cold, calculated stare that says he's not just trying to win matches anymore. He's trying to hurt people. He's trying to end careers. He's trying to prove that his way, the Death Riders' way, is the only way that matters in professional wrestling. Darby tried to fight back. Of course he did. That's who he is. Even when he's outnumbered 5-1, even when the odds are impossible, Darby Allin doesn't back down. He started swinging, connecting with shots that would drop most men, but the Death Riders kept coming. For every punch Darby landed, he took 3 back. For every moment of hope, there was another devastating blow that drove him closer to the mat. Claudio Castagnoli, that Swiss giant with hands like sledgehammers, grabbed Darby and launched him across the ring like he weighed nothing. The sound of Darby's body hitting the turnbuckle echoed through the arena, and you could see the pain written across his face. But they weren't done. Not even close. Wheeler Yuta, the young prodigy who's been completely consumed by the Death Riders' mentality, grabbed a steel chair. The crowd erupted in boos so loud you could barely hear the commentary team. Yuta didn't hesitate. He raised the chair high above his head and brought it crashing down across Darby's back. Once, twice, 3 times. Each shot more vicious than the last. The metallic crack of steel meeting flesh and bone is a sound that wrestling fans know too well, and it never gets easier to hear. Darby crumpled to the mat, and for a moment, just a brief moment, it looked like it might be over. But Moxley wasn't satisfied. He grabbed Darby by his long black hair, yanked his head back, and started talking to him. We couldn't hear exactly what was said, but based on the look on Moxley's face, it wasn't words of encouragement. This was personal. This was a message. Moxley wanted Darby to understand that this beating wasn't random. This was calculated. This was deserved in the Death Riders' twisted worldview. And then Moxley did something that sent chills down everyone's spine. He smiled. Not a joyful smile. Not a triumphant smile. A sinister, disturbing smile that suggested he was enjoying every second of Darby's suffering. The attack continued outside the ring. The Death Riders dragged Darby's limp body through the ropes and onto the floor. They cleared the announce table, that classic wrestling signal that something even worse is about to happen. The commentators scattered. The crowd was in an absolute frenzy, screaming, some fans trying to reach over the barricade, security struggling to maintain order. This wasn't just a wrestling show anymore. This felt real. This felt dangerous. Castagnoli lifted Darby up for a devastating neutralizer, and in one brutal motion, drove him through that announce table. The wood splintered. Monitors went flying. Cables sparked. And Darby Allin lay motionless in the wreckage. Medical personnel tried to rush to the scene, but the Death Riders blocked them. They weren't finished making their statement. Moxley grabbed a microphone, standing over Darby's broken body like a conqueror over the defeated. His words were venomous, dripping with contempt for everything Darby represented. He talked about how Darby's daredevil style was reckless, how his heroics were nothing but attention-seeking, how the Death Riders represented the true future of AEW, and anyone who stood in their way would end up exactly like Darby, broken and forgotten. And then came the escape. This is where things got truly chaotic. Instead of leading through the entrance ramp like wrestlers normally do, the Death Riders turned toward the crowd. Security immediately went on high alert. Fans scattered in every direction. Some were terrified. Others were so caught up in the moment they tried to reach out and touch the Death Riders as they passed. Moxley led the way, shoving security guards aside, pushing through the stunned crowd with his group following close behind. Cameras struggled to keep up with the action. The production crew was scrambling. Nobody expected this. Nobody was prepared for the Death Riders to literally flee through the audience like they were escaping the scene of a crime. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. By escaping through the crowd, the Death Riders were showing that they don't follow the rules. They don't care about tradition. They don't respect the boundaries that separate performers from fans, order from chaos. They exist in their own world, and they're dragging everyone else into it whether they like it or not. Fans were pulling out their phones, recording every second, posting to social media in real time. Within minutes, footage from dozens of different angles was flooding the internet. The hashtags were trending worldwide. Wrestling media outlets were scrambling to get statements. This was the kind of moment that transcends wrestling and becomes a genuine cultural event. Back in the ring, Darby Allin was finally receiving medical attention. The sight was heartbreaking. This warrior, this man who's given everything to professional wrestling, who's put his body through unimaginable punishment to entertain fans, lay surrounded by EMTs checking his vitals, stabilizing his neck, preparing to transport him out of the arena. The crowd was chanting Darby's name, a show of support that echoed through the building. But the question on everyone's mind was simple and terrifying: how badly was he hurt? Would he be able to compete again? Had the Death Riders actually ended his career? The implications of this attack are massive. AEW has always prided itself on being different from other wrestling companies, on giving wrestlers freedom to tell compelling stories, on pushing boundaries. But this felt like those boundaries had been completely demolished. Tony Khan, AEW's president, will have to respond. There will have to be consequences. You can't have a group of wrestlers attacking someone and then escaping through the crowd without security or company officials doing something about it. But what can be done? Suspend the Death Riders? That only makes them more dangerous when they return. Fine them? Money means nothing to people who care only about inflicting pain. Ban them from the arena? Good luck enforcing that against Jon Moxley and his crew. What's even more disturbing is how calculated this all seemed. The Death Riders didn't just randomly decide to attack Darby Allin. They chose their moment perfectly. They executed their assault with military precision. They had an escape route planned. This wasn't the act of out-of-control wrestlers losing their tempers. This was a strategic operation designed to send a message to the entire AEW roster: nobody is safe. If they can do this to Darby Allin, one of the most popular and resilient wrestlers in the company, they can do it to anyone. The wrestling community is divided in its reaction. Some fans are absolutely outraged, demanding that AEW take immediate action against the Death Riders. They argue that this kind of violence, especially the escape through the crowd, sets a dangerous precedent and puts fans at risk. Others are fascinated by the storytelling, praising AEW for creating such an intense and memorable moment. They argue that this is exactly the kind of unpredictable, boundary-pushing content that makes AEW special. And then there are those who fall somewhere in between, appreciating the moment while also being genuinely concerned about where this storyline goes next. Darby Allin's response, when he's physically able to give one, will be crucial. Will he seek immediate revenge? Will he try to recruit allies to even the odds against the Death Riders? Will he take time to recover and come back stronger? Or will this attack change him fundamentally, turning him into something darker, something more willing to embrace the violence that's been inflicted upon him? Darby has always walked the line between hero and daredevil, between inspirational and reckless. The Death Riders might have just pushed him fully to one side of that line. The Death Riders themselves are now at the center of AEW's universe. Jon Moxley has successfully created the most dominant and terrifying faction in the company's history. They're not concerned with championships, though they could easily take them if they wanted. They're not concerned with main events or pay-per-view matches. They're concerned with power, with control, with reshaping AEW in their image. Every wrestler on the roster has to be looking over their shoulder now, wondering if they're next. Every tag team, every singles competitor, every champion has to consider the possibility that the Death Riders might decide they're the next target. What happened on Dynamite wasn't just an attack. It was a declaration of war. The Death Riders have drawn a line in the sand, and they've made it clear that anyone who opposes them will face the same fate as Darby Allin. The escape through the crowd added another layer to their mystique, turning them from wrestlers into something more dangerous, more unpredictable. They're no longer bound by the normal rules of professional wrestling. They exist in the space between performance and reality, and that makes them absolutely terrifying. As fans, we're left with more questions than answers. How will AEW management respond? Will other wrestlers band together to oppose the Death Riders? Can Darby Allin recover from this attack, both physically and mentally? What's the Death Riders' ultimate goal? These questions will drive the conversation for weeks, possibly months to come, and that's exactly what great professional wrestling should do. It should leave us talking, debating, passionately discussing what we witnessed and what might happen next. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking with us through this breakdown. We know emotions are running high. We know this attack affected a lot of people in different ways. That's why we need this community more than ever. Subscribe to Ring Rumble if you haven't already, because we're going to be following every development in this story. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Are you Team Darby or do you understand the Death Riders' perspective? Hit that like button if this video helped you process what happened. Share it with your wrestling friends who need to see this analysis. And most importantly, stay tuned, because something tells us this is only the beginning of something much bigger and much more dangerous in AEW.